Has anybody got any questions before we start? No? Okay, then let's crack on. Okay, so we've done our kind of introductions. It's really great that we've got a mixture of people who've never applied before and people who've applied but been sort of unsuccessful. Hopefully this will give you an opportunity to kind of perhaps find out where your application could have been stronger. I also, I suppose, want to kind of give you some sort of reassurance that if you've been unsuccessful before, it's not necessarily that there was anything wrong with your project or that there was anything wrong with what you were suggesting. It's just perhaps that hasn't kind of translated through into the panel understanding what it is. Or there's perhaps significant bits of information that you perhaps hadn't understood that you wanted and that you needed to include in that. I'm going to take you through the kind of the process of how the grants are assessed. I think this is a really, fair play to Cavan County Council for allowing me to sort of share all this information with you. The staff want you to succeed in this. Sometimes I think there is a perception that funders are trying to limit the applications in or don't want people to kind of to be successful, and that's absolutely not the case here. So I think it's really good that you're kind of getting a little bit of a kind of behind the scenes to see how the kind of the process works, how the scoring works, the kind of the process that we go through. And again, that will hopefully all feed into your being even more prepared in your applications beforehand. I want you just have a think about, if I said to you now, give me your 30-second elevator pitch on what you were looking for funding for. I wonder how many of you, don't panic, I'm not going to get you to do that, but I wonder how many of you, would be able to articulate your project, whether that's an application for a bursary or whether that's a major sort of multi-year project, major project, community project, whether you'd be able to do that clearly, concisely, and convey that in a sort of 30-second pitch in terms of kind of hitting all of the sort of information that we want. And I know that can be a struggle for lots of people. So what this kind of sort of this evening is about is as much about the kind of, I'm not going to be able to write the application for you. I'm not going to be saying, this is the sort of, this is the magic information you need to go in. It's more around the mindset of how you come to the application process and the kind of the structure of it and that kind of the breadth of information that we're looking for. I'm not going to be here giving you sort of project ideas or anything like that. So hopefully that this will all just feed into an even higher quality application for you. So obviously the focus is on arts and creative grants. So it's a really kind of, I suppose, simple sort of process. Every local authority does them slightly differently. So I can't say this is for those of you who might be working in a group that covers more than one county. I can't say this is how Monaghan do theirs or how Leitrim do theirs or whatever, but I can tell you how Cavan County Council grants are assessed. The first thing is applications are received by the deadline. There'll be several things as we go through this session that I will repeat multiple times. Getting your application in by the deadline is one of those things. If you do not meet the deadline, your application will go in the bin. It's as simple as that, whether it's the digital bin or the physical bin. The deadlines are there, and it's only, in fairness to everybody who's made the effort and perhaps rushed to get them in. So if you miss the deadline, your application won't be included. So it's really, really important that you meet the deadline and that you allow yourself plenty of time in the run up to prepare for that. So anything after the deadline will not be assessed. Generally, it will be given to the panel to have a look at, but it won't be assessed. And there's nothing more frustrating than seeing what looks like an amazing project, but the deadline's been missed. So, yeah. So the lead officer, so that depends. So if it's arts bursaries and the arts project grants, that will be Karina, or if it's Karina Noog or the creative communities grants, that will be Sharon. So whoever is the lead officer, they will look through for completeness. They will then follow up with you on any missing paperwork. And by missing paperwork, I don't mean if there's any sections of the application not completed, but for example, if you're working with children and you haven't attached your safeguarding policy, or if you've been asked to submit a CV, for example, for the bursary things. So things like that, if there's any kind of missing attachments, then the lead officer will come back to you and say, Bob, you haven't included your CV, you've said you've attached it, but it hasn't been attached or whatever. So they will follow up on those kind of missing paperwork, but as I say, they won't follow up on you're looking for 15,000 euro, but you've only put a short paragraph in. They won't be following up on that sort of thing. The applications will kind of come to us untouched in that regard. Any applications that are deemed ineligible by the lead officer will be highlighted to the assessment panel and to the adjudicators. There's going to be 2 of us this year on the Corona Yog and the Creative Communities assessment. I'm not sure how many adjudicators will be on the arts and the bursaries one at this stage, but it's likely to be 2 or 3. There's normally 2 or 3, and they're completely independent of council, external to the council. So it's really, it's not only really sort of, I suppose, fair in terms of, just being one step removed from the council, but it also means that it frees the lead officers up in terms of being able to provide additional support and advice to you without being, showing any kind of favouritism or anything. So that they're not doing that dual role. They're being one step removed from the assessment process. So they will generally come to us and they will say, look, these applications are ineligible because the project isn't taking place at the right time, or it's a private business, or whatever it might be. But if there's anything that's ineligible, they will flag that with us. We will just double check that from our perspective that it's also ineligible. If we believe it's eligible, then we will assess it. Otherwise, it will then the lead officer will communicate that back to the applicant. Then what happens is the adjudicators individually assess all applications. So we don't all come together at first. We work alone and we work through every single application. So all of us assess all of the applications rather than them being sort of, divided up. We all assess all of the applications, and only when we've done that, we then come together to discuss them and to score them. The reason we don't score them in advance, I suppose, is really that some of us have expertise in different art forms, and some of us kind of, I suppose there's an open to interpretation thing as well. So we will generally make notes on all of the individual ones. So things that we find particularly attractive about that application, some elements of the project that we like, we might have questions about some elements. So we'll make a list of those questions. We'll highlight things that we think are particularly strong in that application, and we'll also highlight any concerns. And then we come together and we discuss that, and then we score the applications. So generally we kind of get locked in a room for a couple of days to do that, depending on the number of applications. And as I say, we work through every single one on an individual basis. The amount of time that we spend on each application varies depending on the amount of information that's in it and the complexity of the project or application. We will then make our recommendations to the lead officer. And so the recommendations are both our scoring and whether they're successful or not. And I'll come to a little bit more about the scoring in a minute. Certainly I know at Cavan and Over District Council, those recommendations were then, when they went back, they then are made to the actual elected representatives, so your political representatives, and they were then ratified that way. That's not what happens at Cavan County Council. Our recommendations, generally, if the lead officer, if there's anything that he or she, if they've perhaps seen an application and they thought it was very poor and we thought it was excellent, then generally we'll discuss things like that. That hasn't ever happened on my time being involved. We're generally very much on the sort of the same page. But our recommendations are generally final. And they go to the lead officer, and then applicants are advised of the outcome, so whether they're successful or not. Feedback is given on request. And one of the things I would say to you all is to seek feedback whether or not you've been successful. So generally we tend to always get feedback if we've been unsuccessful, and we go back and what could I have done better, or why wasn't my application funded? But we're not very good at asking for feedback when we have been successful. And I think this is particularly important because you'll see when we come to the scoring that sometimes applications which have just been fallen short of the pass mark, if other applications, for example, which have been awarded funding, don't go ahead, there is a possibility that this actually happened for a number of applications during this year, that the lead officer would come back and say, look, we had originally said you were unsuccessful, but actually you scored 58, 59, the pass mark was 60. If you could tweak your project X, Y, and Z, we'll be able to sort of support that project going forward. And the other reason it's useful to seek feedback is if your application just kind of scraped through. So if you were in the sort of the early 60s or even in the late 60s, the pass mark isn't necessarily the same every year. It depends on the level of the quality of the applications coming in. And as we're hopefully increasing the quality of applications year on year, then the pass mark will go up depending on the volume of applications that come in and the amount of grant aid available. So whilst the pass mark was 60 last year, and we're proposing that will be the pass mark this year, it's possible that in future years the pass mark might go up to 65 or to 67 or even to 70, depending on the rest of the applications. So it's really important that you aim to be scoring 80 plus, so that you're well over the pass mark, so that so if you get that feedback, even if you are funded, that that you're doing things right, and even the feedback to make it even better. So even if you've got 85 and you get some feedback and say, well, what would have made it a 90 or a 95, then Sharon or Karina will be able to give you that kind of feedback, so that you can, even if you've done a fantastic application, that it can be even more fantastic. And again, that does mean, like in times when we're not able to fully fund all of the successful applications, that you might be able to get a higher percentage of it funded if you're hitting those really, really high marks. So I hope that kind of sort of makes sense. So yeah, so I'd encourage you to get feedback whether you have been successful or unsuccessful. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Sorry, well, let me go to the next page again. There we go. So there seems to be a bit of a delay. Okay, so last year, so I say at this point in time, there's no reason to believe it will be different. But however, if we had significantly more applications this year, then we may have to revisit. So last year, the pass mark was 60. And this was for, I think it was the same for the arts project and the bursary for the arts funding. But this was certainly the case for Cwrw and for the Creative Communities Fund. So if you scored 49 or less, we deemed that a poor application. Again, just to reiterate, it doesn't necessarily mean that your project was poor. It could have been amazing in your head, but based on the information you'd given us, we just didn't get the level of information that we needed. 50 to 59 was obviously better, but it was still not considered a pass. So we didn't feel that we had sufficient information to be able to kind of pass that application. 60 to 69 was satisfactory, so that was a pass. The kind of had a good category, which was 70 to 79, and then excellent was sort of 80 plus as well. And what we will then look at is the sort of percentage of funding those projects where we're not able to fund them successfully. So the higher the pass mark, the more likely you are to get your project fully funded. Okay. This little tree here is with I just want to acknowledge Supporting Communities NI, whose kind of tree model this is. So your funding application in its totality should tell a story. Okay, you should detail your inputs, which I know some of us work a bit more visually than others. So in this case, the inputs are kind of the roots of the tree. So this is the thing that you're kind of putting in, which enables your project to grow. So this is things like your staff, this is the artist that you're using, this is the materials, your equipment, the money that you're putting in, and your time, of course, as well. And the trunks are the things that will make it grow, the things that kind of will come out of that. So the outputs are the tangible things. There's often a bit of confusion between outputs and outcomes. Outputs are the tangible things that come out of the project. So they are the workshops, the performances, the exhibitions, the masterclasses, the sculptures, all of those sorts of things, the festivals, whatever it might be, the photographic exhibition, the tangible things that come at the end. The outcomes then are the things that you have kind of achieved or changed. Okay, so that's things like developing new skills, or increasing confidence, or creating new partnerships. That's a type of outcome. What will happen as a result of your project? And then the impacts that's the apple pie in this theory of change diagram here. So the apple pie is the impacts that you have had. So it tends to be more of a kind of a more long term, as a result of the project. What is change? What is that story of change that you're able to tell? So is it kind of about fostering a sense of place, or is it about community pride? Is it about reducing social isolation? Is it about raising the ambition of young people in Cavan? What are those long-term impacts that your project is looking to change? So that's the kind of the story that we would like you to tell us. So tell us about what you're putting in, tell us about what comes out, tell us what's changed, and tell us how you're impacting people and places. Okay. So the basics of your funding application, and this is really, really important, because if you miss the kind of the basic information out, it doesn't really matter how fantastic your project is if you're kind of missing some of the basic stuff. So this is absolutely not rocket science, but you would be amazed how many people miss the absolute basics. So Cúrainne it's got to include a final event, output, whether it's an exhibition, a screening, a performance, a workshop, whatever it is, a thing. It's got to be public, it's got to be free of charge, and it must take place on Saturday, the 6th of June this year. So if you propose a series of workshops beforehand, that's absolutely fine, but you've got to have a final event or something, a thing on the 6th of June. Not on the 7th of June, not on the 5th of June, not on the 26th of June, on the 6th of June. So please bear that in mind. You would not believe the number of applications we got last year that did not have that. So I say it's not everything that has to happen on the 6th of June, but the final thing must take place. And there could be something afterwards if it ties in, but you must have that whatever that thing is on Saturday, the 6th of June. Activities should be child-centred. They should be around fostering creativity, and they should engage a diverse audience through a range of different creative forms. Please note that priority will be given wherever possible to harder to reach children and young people. I know some people don't like that harder to reach, the HTR phrase in terms of children and young people. By harder to reach children and young people, we're talking about perhaps children in direct provision, children from families seeking refugee status, asylum seekers, children with disabilities, children in care. Projects which incorporate Irish language are also given a higher priority. And we're also seeking a wide geographical spread throughout the county. That doesn't mean that you get kind of extra points for the fact that you're delivering in Ballyborough, for example, but we do want to encourage, please don't think that you're at a disadvantage because you're not doing something in Cavan Town. The County Council is very much seeking that wide geographical spread. And if you can deliver in multiple places, so you might be doing something in Ballyconnell, something in Ballyborough, and something in Cavan Town, even better, fantastic, but you don't need to do that. So it's all about what's appropriate for your project and the audience that you're working with. Collaborative projects are very much encouraged. So that can be, you know, individual creators working with youth groups or community organisations working with statutory bodies or whatever it might be. But those kind of collaborative projects generally across all of the art funds are seen very much as, are very much encouraged. The maximum amount of funding for Cruin and Og is 5,000. Okay. So yeah, and then the last sort of section at the bottom there is priority will be given to cross-sectoral and collaborative projects with a strong community focus. So the stronger that community focus, the more likely you are to succeed. When we did the in-person workshop last week, there was a question on what does cross-sectoral mean? And that just means with a different kind of organisation in a different sort of sector to you. So if you're a youth group, you might do a collaborative project with a nursing home or with an HSC day centre, or it could be with a local business, or it could be with a community group. If you're a drama group, you could be doing a project with a dance organisation or with a print workshop, print artists. So it's coming from different perspectives, whether that's art forms, but also in terms of different kind of sectors and things as well. So that's Cruin and Og. The open call, so the Creative Communities open call. So there is two types of grants here that you should note. So one is micro grants and one is strategic grants. So the micro grants are between 500 and 2,500, and the strategic grants are 2,500 up to 10,000. Now, please note that if you're looking for a micro grant, but your project takes place after the 27th of September, so if it takes place from the 28th of September onwards, you must apply for the strategic grant, even if you're only looking for €500. Okay. So if you're looking for doing something at Halloween, for example, you go straight to the strategic grants, even if you're looking for under 2,500. Okay. The strategic grants, I say, are they're kind of larger. The project must take place by the 1st of August next year, and that's completely non-negotiable. So please don't come to the funding stream with, I'm going to do this and it finishes in September, because it just that can't happen. Okay, and that's just to do with the way that Cavan County Council received the funding. So there is no exceptions to that. Okay. If your project is absolutely exceptional, and you would be looking to be scoring, you know, at least 80+%, there may be funding for up to 15,000, but you need to be scoring really, really high on that. It's possible that you are coming for an ask for 2026 and 2027. So if it's over the 2 years, if your project is considerably over that, what you might want to look at is applying for a project, for a pilot project, and say, well, look, this is a pilot project. This is what we're proposing to do in year one. And should this be successful, we will come back for another, hopefully 10,000 next year. So, you know, if your project, the scale of your project is kind of in excess of 15,000, or even if it's between 10 and 15, you might want to just think about breaking that down over 2 years. Again, you know, look, Karina or Sharon will be able to provide further advice on all of this, and they're going to be a fantastic source of help and advice to you all. And I would encourage every single one of you to, if you're thinking about making an application, if you haven't already had a conversation with one of the arts officers, then please do, or, you know, ping them an email and just, you know, say, this is what I was thinking of applying for, if you're looking for some kind of some advice and guidance. For the open call, you must be based in Cavan. So if you're based in Monaghan and you're working with a Cavan organisation, that's fine, but the application should be coming from that Cavan organisation. Yeah, you have to, if you're working in partnership, you need a letter of support. And that letter, there's no sort of specific format in terms of what that letter of support looks like. It should be clear it's from the partner organisation, that it's specific to this project, what the nature of that is. So is that providing an in-kind venue hire for you? Is that around they're providing a dance tutor and a drama tutor that you're working with? Is it around them providing some expert advice on local heritage, whatever it is. So you just need to detail that, and also the value of that support as well. You need to be hitting at least one of the objectives of the Cavan Culture and Creativity Strategy. That's all online. You know, go and have a quick look at that. It's a very, very sort of clear document. Yeah, you need to make sure that you're hitting at least one of those objectives. If you're not sure if you are, again, check in with Karina or Sharon on that. If your project involves children or young people, you must submit evidence that you have a current child protection policy and that you've got up-to-date Garda vetting, or that you will put up-to-date Garda vetting in place. So if you're bringing a new tutor on board for a project, or if you're going to do, for example, if you're going to advertise to recruit a tutor so you don't actually know who that tutor is, you must be clear that once you've appointed that tutor that you will do Garda vetting, and make sure that you build in timescale for that, because there's a bit of a delay with Garda vetting at the minute. Please note that that child protection policy must be yours. We had a couple of applications last year where they were, for example, there was, say, this is just an example, so apologies if anyone is from Shercock Community Centre, but just for example, they had submitted, the youth club submitted a project where actually the child protection policy belonged to the hall that they were using, not the group that was delivering the project. So it really is really, really important that the policy is your policy, not somebody else's policy. If you haven't got a policy and you need to put one in place for the project, there's, you know, Karina and Sharon will be able to signpost you to a good template, and there's loads of really good information online these days. So getting hold of an appropriate template policy, you know, you don't need to start from scratch. Okay, so that's the open call. And with the open call as well, bear in mind this is the kind of, it's much broader than just arts as well. So you know, there is the whole STEAM, so the science, technology, engineering, arts and maths as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can bring in all sorts of environmental, engineering, maths. There's loads of different things there. I'm not saying that you could bring that into an arts project, of course, but there is a much broader range of things within that open call. Heritage, for example, and Irish language can both come under that, under this open call, the Creative Communities funding as well. So it is just that bit broader. If you're not sure which funding stream to apply for, again, just check in with Sharon and Karina, and they'll be able to advise you which one is best suited for your project. So for Arts Project, they've been slightly restructured this year. Those of you who came along, I know most people online this evening didn't, but for those of you who came along to the in-person event last week, Karina just talked briefly to this, that the kind of the funding is slightly different this year, just in terms of there's the arts projects, and there's also the bursaries separated out. I've seen the application forms that are all online for this, and they really have a lot of effort has gone into making it as easy as possible for you. So that is another reason they're trying to, you know, help you succeed in this. So for the arts project, your application could be for one large single project, or it could be for a number of smaller related projects or programs to run throughout the year. And remember, you can run through for a number of months on that. Please note the different levels of funding. So community and voluntary groups, there's funding for up to 2,000, for emerging mid-stage artists up to 3,000, and for professional artists and organisations up to 4,000. You need to submit a number of supporting documents for this. You need a maximum of 2 samples of work, so, you know, choose those carefully, and please do not attach 30 different samples of your work, because they won't be looked at, and it could be just the first 2 that are there that will be used. Make sure you attach a CV. Make sure you attach those supporting samples of work, and your supporting letters from any partners or collaborators, and also the budget as well. In terms of the assessment for this particular stream, It's for this kind of 25%. So there's weighting across 4 separate sections. Okay. So the artistic ambition of the project is 25%. The overall quality and track record or the potential of the artist or the group is also 25%. The feasibility based on resources and planning is 25%, and then the benefit for the county is also 25%. So I'll talk you through what sort of information that needs to go into that in a minute. And then finally on the bursaries, again, please note that there's the 3 different bands this year. That's emerging artists 1,500, mid-stage artists 2,000, and then for professional artists 3,000. Please note that your CV should be a maximum of 2 pages. So do not attach a 15-page CV with every exhibition that you've ever done in your 30-year career, because it won't be read. Okay, 2 pages. A clear description of your proposed activities. You've got a maximum of 500 words on that. You've got a maximum of 300 words then on how your bursary will benefit your artistic development. How you're going to use the funds, again, just a description of that, and then confirmation of any of the funding if applicable. And again, don't forget to attach your CV, maximum 2 pages, 2 samples of your work, and any kind of letters of support. And again, there you've got your application is being assessed over 4 criteria, and it's equal weighting, so it's 25% each on the ambition and your potential impact on your practice, the feasibility and clarity of your proposed activities, your track record and potential, another 25%, and the benefit, not just for you, but for the county as well. Okay, so that's the kind of the basics of all of that. Now, I can't emphasize this enough. Only the information on the application form will be taken into consideration. We sometimes get groups or artists afterwards saying to either Karina or Sharon, when they're unsuccessful, but look, I've been doing this for 6 million years. It doesn't matter. They're not assessing the applications unless you're telling the assessors that you have been doing this for 6 million years or whatever you've been doing, whether that's your track record of managing funding, whether that's the background of your group, whether that's your reputation as an artist, where you are in terms of emerging, mid-career or established. A summary of previous work that you've done, all of those sorts of things, that whole mass of your skills and experience of knowledge, you have to tell us briefly in the application. If it's not in the application, it can't be assessed. Okay, I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay, have we got any questions so far? No. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question, please. 2 questions actually. One relates to community groups, because obviously the funding streams have changed slightly.
Yes.
And they're sort of more project based, and obviously the events one, a separate one as well. As a group, are we still able to put as part of our application like the running costs, so like for our website, insurance, that kind of thing?
Only if that relates to the project.
To the project one.
Yeah. I mean,
so only if it relates to an individual, because we would do a number of projects across the year. So obviously, we take out an annual insurance, we have cybersecurity on our laptop, and we have a cost to host the website and that sort of kind of thing. So how does that work now?
My understanding, and please, Marina, please jump in if this is not the case. My understanding is those running costs cannot be included unless they're specific to the project. So if as a result, for example, of the project, you need to have a new section of your website because you're creating a digital database or whatever it might be, if you've got those costs would be eligible because they're directly related to the project. But if it's just or if, for example, you need to, as a result of, for example, if an artist or a group is saying, okay, well, look, we're now actually going to be delivering in a different place, so our insurance costs are going to go up by €300 because we need to put a special clause in our insurance. That's directly relates, for example, to the project, so that would be an eligible cost, but not your general running costs. that you wouldn't that you would still have if it wasn't for the project. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so like, the insurance would cover, usually covers, most of our activities across the year for our members. We don't take in a membership fee or anything, so we don't actually have any income apart from, grants that, for projects and things. So, so you're saying, so unless we need particular insurance for a particular project, then we can't apply for that.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Right,
You
okay.
know, you might want to just to double check that. There
Yeah,
may be a small percent or a contribution towards that.
okay. Because
So
that could mean then really that our group might have to stop, because because we're not, we don't raise any funds, we don't charge anything, to members. So that's really interesting. And the other question,
I'm not sorry. I look. I double check that. I mean,
yeah,
get in touch with Sharon on that particular fund. Just because I'm not 100% on that,
yeah,
because I'm unaware of what other funds there are within across the
yeah.
whole of the. You know, because there could be
Yeah,
community
I
group
understand.
funding.
Yeah, I know that would probably be the case for the Creative Cavan.
Yeah,
That's slightly different, but I meant, the actual, the not the bursary, but
the arts projects.
the arts project one.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the other question I have was on the bursary side, as an individual, one of the sections is a clear description of 500 words, or less of, what you're going to do. There's no field on the form to actually put that in, because I tried today. There's no field in the form for that. Now it says that on the details of what you need to CV your CV, minimum 2 page, maximum 2 pages. But actually on the form, it asks, what your let me just say it doesn't actually have a section to put that the actual piece
Is
of
that
writing
there's
in.
two sections to that bursary form? So I think you kind of go all down, and then you need to click next onto that, and then there's kind of a
Yeah,
next bit.
right. I couldn't find it. It didn't
Oh,
actually have that
okay, so it's the
on the
detailed
form.
description bit. Is that the bit you're saying, Sally Ann, that's
The
missing?
the bit where it says, on the instructions, it says a clear description of 500 words, um, of what you're going to do. There's one, how it will benefit you, how it benefit your development, which is 300 words.
And this is the
But
bursary one, sorry.
yeah, the bursary, particularly
Okay.
the bursary form. But I couldn't find where it says about your current practice, so,
Yeah.
but there wasn't actually a field um,
Leave that one
for
with me. I'll pick that up and I'll get
that.
I'll get
Yeah. So
Karina
unless
or
I
yeah.
mean, I went round and round in circles looking at it today. I have
Okay.
actually emailed Karina, but it wasn't
Okay.
until later today, so she probably hasn't picked that up yet.
Okay.
But yes, because
No, that's a good question. No problem at all.
yeah,
I'll make sure I follow it up with Karina for you, Sally Ann.
yeah. I say they probably updated a form that was in existence, and maybe
Maybe,
that
yeah.
field wasn't put in or something.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you for that. Great
Thank you.
questions.
Thanks.
So some of you may be familiar with the Just So stories. So I'm just going to kind of take you through a what, why, when, how, where, and who in terms of the information for the application form. Okay, so as we work through, please feel free to just kind of make notes and things, whatever, and then we'll come back at the end if you've got any questions. So the why is often forgotten in funding applications, and it's often ones that groups find or individuals find hardest to answer. Why are you doing this project? So it's really useful, or it's vital really for us as assessors to understand what the motivation and rationale is behind your project. So why are you doing this? How is the need or the demand being established? How does it fit with your existing work? Is this something completely new? So are you going off in a completely new direction with this? And if so, why are you doing that? Or does this build on something that you're already there? And this is kind of the next sort of obvious sort of step. You may be doing something that you've been doing for years, but actually you're now choosing to do that with older people where you've mostly worked with the general population, or that you've worked with young people for a number of years, but actually now you're going to work with an older person's group and do some intergenerational work. So have you the knowledge, skills or expertise, or how are you going to bring that in for your project? And why are you, either as an individual or as an organisation, perfectly placed to deliver this project? In terms of evidencing the need or demand, and this is something that you will have to do if you are working with children, young people, or with older people as well, is that you will need to demonstrate that their voice is heard in this project. This is not you going away in a room dreaming up something that you're going to do to children, young people, or older people. It's really, really important that you have engaged directly with them so that you know that this is something that they are interested and that there's a need for or want for, and that's going to work for that particular cohort. We've had projects over the years where, you know, people have come to us, looked for funding for a whole series of workshops with young people, and then they've come back several months later, having been awarded the funding, to say, actually, can we use the money for something else because the young people don't want to do fly drumming or whatever it is. So there's been no engagement there. So it's really, really important. There are guidelines online on the Cavan County Council website around this. So you might be, you might do a survey, which could be digital, it could be in person. You might have a focus group. And look, I'm calling it a focus group, but that might just be as simple as getting, young people together, after youth club one day, give them a slice of pizza, sit down and ask them what it is that they want to work on and what they're interested in doing. This could come from feedback from previous projects. So it might be that, you did a project last year, and as a result of that, it's been identified that particular group of people that you're working with now would like to develop skills in this particular area. You could draw on research or study, or it could be an approach from a partner organisation who's coming to you with a particular research or some evidence or need that they have identified. So it's really, really important that you tell us why there is a need or demand for doing the thing that you're doing. If it's not particularly obvious, and as I say, if you're working with proposing to work with children, young people, and or older people, it's really, really critical that their voice is centre in that. So it's child-centred, young person-centred, or older person-centred. In terms of the what, please be clear and concise, and assume that the reader has no prior knowledge of your organisation, of your art form, or will not necessarily have detailed knowledge of your local area. Look, you don't need to explain where Cavan is or anything like that, but don't assume that somebody assessing your application has a detailed knowledge of a particular visual art technique, or will understand musical terms, for example. So assume no prior knowledge. Try to avoid technical jargon wherever you can. If it's essential in terms of this being specific about what it is that you're proposing to do, just give a very, very brief explanation on that, okay? Have an appealing and creative name for your project. It just shows us that you've thought about it and that it feels like a kind of a well thought through thing. Summarise your project for us. Feel free to use bullet points. It doesn't need to be big, long sort of, bullet points can be really, really helpful, as can diagrams sometimes as well. Briefly describe the process for us. So tell us what those inputs are. Tell us what you need in terms of, the money, the time, the materials, the equipment, all of those things that we talked about before. Briefly describe the product. So what is it? Is it a series of workshops? Is it a performance? Is it a show and tell? Is it a series of masterclasses? What is it that you're going to be doing? What is the output from your project? And be clear about the quality aspect and also the community engagement. If you don't just tell us you're going to engage with the local community, tell us how you're going to do that, okay? Briefly describe the change. So what will happen as a result of your project? And what is that impact? And it will be different from every project, so it's about what's being appropriate. So the impacts may be short term. If you're proposing to do a series of 2-hour taster workshops with young people, don't tell us it will transform young people's lives, okay? Because we just won't believe you. However, if you're proposing to do a 2-year filmmaking project with a group of 10 to 12 young people that you'll work with over a long period of time, building up a whole raft of skills and experiences and relationships with them, yeah, absolutely, that may have the potential to change lives. So be realistic, because generally we can see if somebody's overinflating what it is that they're doing. We're not saying that you have to change the world at all, but just be realistic in terms of what your project will achieve. And just to kind of give you an example in terms of, look, the level of detail will of course vary between somebody who's submitting an application for €500 than somebody who's submitting information for a €15,000 project. But there are certainly certain details that we will still need to be able to assess your project and your application. So on the one hand, somebody could submit an application that would say, well, we will deliver creative workshops for young people leading up to a performance. Our experienced tutor will work with young people to incorporate their ideas on their environment into the performance. So we get a sense that, okay, it's a workshop program, that there'll be some kind of performance, and that you'll work with somebody who's got experience in that area, and that you're working with young people, which is great. We can see you're not just doing it directly to them. And there's something around the environment. But who's we? What do you mean creative workshops? What is that? Young people could be anything from 12 to 22. Is that a performance in a public space? Is it a show and tell for friends and family? What kind of tutor? Is it a youth worker? Is it a highly experienced sculptor? How will their ideas be incorporated? What do you mean by environment? Is that the building around them? Are you talking about the natural environment? What is that? And again, what is the performance piece? So if you did something a bit more like this, that would tell us an awful lot more. So look, okay, we've coincidentally got somebody, I just was picking Ballyconnell as an example, but Ballyconnell Youth Club will deliver a series of 10 weekly 2-hour drama and physical theatre workshops for 12